Welcome again to the second annual gathering of my lovely compatriots here at my tavern of ill-gotten gain and ill-gotten repute. We have new faces this year, but they're all wonderful people, as they're friends of mine, and any friends of mine are wonderful people. So we're going to continue our tradition of reveling in each other's stories and cheering each other's accolades and toasting all of our victories, our accomplishments, and our accolades from around the globe and further. We have a wonderful group of people here, which I'm going to allow to introduce themselves, starting to my left.
Yes, of course. Now, you probably know me as the czar of the safari, naturally. I've had many places, I've gone many places. So, I don't believe I know your name. Can I have your name? Jordan. That's going to be my name now. So my name is Jordan, and I am the czar of the safari.
Bravo. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
You, sir.
My name is Paul, the intrepid Paul. Blatant bloke. I spend plenty of time traveling, adventuring, accruing wealth, and I happen to find myself here fearless, especially of all other Pauls.
Indeed.
Pauls can be a dangerous lot.
Oh, they can.
To be the king of Pauls is no small feat. End of the tale.
Greetings! It's wonderful to be here once again. I'm so absolutely thrilled. Oh, pardon me, getting a little too excited and forgot to actually introduce myself. So, my name is Ali Aladon, glorious explorer, adventurer extraordinaire, and my pickpocket on good day.
And last but not least.
Hello, I am the Lady Captain, Theodosia Bellington, Duchess of London. It's a real title, I swear. You probably know me for my determination to become the person to sail around the globe looking for the edge of the world, and I will find it.
It's there, I assure you. I've seen it.
Excellent.
So, we have some tales to tell, and I'm looking forward to it. I haven't had this good of company all at my table since last year, and it's been amazing, an amazing year, but I'm looking forward to hear the accolades of all of my good friends.
Feels like it's been a lifetime.
In some places it has.
Bam.
Okay, so after that intro, the game that we're playing tonight is an improv game called The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Cue prop that I left in the room. This is a storytelling improv game where we're going to be giving each other random and wacky prompts, and we're going to be having to improv the story that those prompts lead to from the perspective of our characters that are essentially old world globetrotters and cosmopolitan and cosmonauts, whatever the case may be, that have stories of all of their wild tales that absolutely could not have happened, are absurd at their core, and totally were accomplished, because we're going to tell you exactly how it happened. And we're going to share our tales, buy rounds of drinks for each other, celebrate each other, remember details about each other's stories that might trip up our companions, because while we want to celebrate the victories and trials and tribulations of our friends, we of course also want to have the best story at the table. And how better to do that than to maybe put something under the wheels of somebody else's wagon. So there is a sort of gotcha mechanic that you will see at play. From there, it's just enjoying the wonderful tradition of being happy for your friends and celebrating their victories, all while wanting to be better than them. So, Czar of the Safari.
Yes. Jordan.
Jordan.
Yes.
Newly acquired Jordan.
Newly, yes.
That's amazing.
Thank you. It's a new title.
Yes, well, taking names is a wonderful feat.
Thank you.
That's an interesting display. Would you revel this table with the tale about the time that I already hit you with that one. So you told me that story last week. So let's say, how you were the first to actually sail to the edge of the world and back.
Sorry, I've already done it.
I'll find a new edge. Yes.
That's true.
Only to find that it was actually Everest and not the edge of the world.
Ah, yes. Now, most of the time, I spend my days on the safari. I have been to the northern safari, the southern safari, and also the Dennis safari. However, this one time, I heard that if you go to the Arctic safari, you can find the edge of the world. Now, of course, you can't go on a safari without some kind of procuring of some kind of map. And I usually have quite a team with me. We have a geologist, of course. We have a navigator. And we also have Skitty. And he is the best at being a nuisance, PhD, in fact. But Skitty also knows how to write, draw, create a map of some kind. And I went up to Skitty and I told him, Skitty, in the Arctic safari, there happens to be the edge of the world. And naturally, he didn't believe me, so I had to threaten him to then make said map. He was fine with that. Don't worry, I paid him later. And he was able to create this map out of what was sort of like bamboo leaves, as well as drawing it with peanut butter. Yes? So we take the map, we set sail on our wagon, and head up to the Arctic safari. Takes approximately, give or take a few days, 874 days to get there. Approximately, give or take. And once getting up into the Arctic, looking for the edge of the world, we look around, no animals to be seen. All tundra, very cold. I have on my shorts, my Crocs, and a plastic bag, trash bag. It's the fashion in the Arctic.
Safari
Yes,
attire.
very familiar.
Safari attire. So I head up, going up towards the edge of the world. A little bit of the map got eaten. There was a bit of peanut butter everywhere. It was a thing. But I was able to find it nonetheless. We travel up and up and up, and there was a little bit of a down, but then an up and an up and an up and up towards the summit where there is hardly any air. You could not even gasp if you tried.
Well, naturally, it's the edge of the world.
Yes. We get up there. Would you know it? There's land on the other side.
Must have
land.
been a letdown.
On the other
It's
side.
literally a letdown.
It really is a letdown. And because of this, I got very angry at Skitty specifically. And we were able to head down and talk to a nearby group of people. And it's, in fact, some mountain. They've already named it Everest of some kind. Some people have already gone to the top. I guess it's a feat, but it's not that. It's not the edge of the world kind of feat. So, in one way, it was the edge of the world. But in other ways, I think I might have to venture further.
It was at least the end of the bamboo and peanut butter world.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
It was tasty.
Kind of a world left. There's no bamboo and peanut butter.
Well, despite the letdown of not finding what you were looking for, wonderful tale.
Thank you.
Huzzah to you.
Huzzah!
Now,
I'm
Paul.
sure you're quite.
Paul, the intrepid Paul, renowned Pauls,
Oh, absolutely.
all the Pauls.
Paul of Pauls.
Yes. I do recall this time of you defeating a goblin army with nothing but goat moon cheese.
You are correct about that, yes.
I don't think everyone has heard this story.
Oh, okay. Perhaps I'll tell again. Maybe you guys can get some entertainment out of it.
Yeah, would be
Absolutely.
lovely.
It's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, goblin cheese.
Well, this all begins with why the goblins needed to be slain, of course. I was making my way through Africa and trying to see all the different animals that there are to see. You see, I'm an observer of beauty, really. And off in the distance, I spy a little green, vaguely humanoid shape. I think must be a big frog.
Of course, naturally.
So I pull out my handy-dandy binoculars and I check, and
But no, all right.
there's two of them, believe it or not.
Oh,
Yes.
indeed, okay.
The first one goes here, and then I move it to here. Binocular.
I see.
And as I was staring out at it, I saw that its hind legs were no bigger than a frog's. They were normal human sized. And its front appendages were not webbed, but rather fingers.
Ghastly.
I knew what this had to be. A goblin!
Oh.
And so I did what, of course, any rational person would do, and I drew my blade, and I summoned the rest of my crew, and we went in pursuit. Now, the goblin, it was scared, of course, right? Without the defenses. But it ran us back to the rest of its group. Now, slaying them with swords, anybody can do that. But cheese? That's where this gets interesting. So, I managed to corral my group to this goblin horde and act very intimidatingly on the outside to keep them within their camp. And while I did so, I had my men rummage back through the bags and see what they could find that would make this of more interest. What they did manage to find was a loaf of bread, not exactly what we needed, but good for feasting afterwards.
Naturally.
We found parchment, paper. We found 3 zebras. Again, not what we needed.
Really a talented crew keeping the zebras in the sack.
I know, in a bag nonetheless. How do they even breathe in there?
With the bread. Wow.
With the that's
The fact
yes.
that the bread survived is a miracle.
Well,
That's
it's well known zebras don't eat bread. They're gluten intolerant.
I see.
And last but not least, 8 gallons of goat milk.
Oh goodness.
Right? Well, now we could drown them in the milk, but that requires being close to them and, of course, getting within melee range, and that's nothing you ever want to do. So instead, we took these buckets and shook them vigorously, like windmills upon our heads. When we did so, the milk, it churned itself into butter and churned itself into cheese. It was quite a lot of spinning.
As I recall, though, this sort of action of churning the milk, isn't it a mating dance of some kind to the goblins?
How could I have possibly forgotten that? Yes, that was truly the scariest part, if anything. As we spun these massive buckets of milk, we began to hear oohs and ahs, a whistle of excitement. Now that truly caught us off guard.
Yes.
That
We
would
were
throw
preparing
Paul
for-
off his game.
For the slaughter of our lives, and instead, we had goblin honeys looking at us, blowing kisses. Now,
Scandalous.
would a good gentleman like me really try to bring my wrath out upon this group?
Maybe an ordinary Paul.
Maybe an ordinary Paul, but no intrepid Paul.
Yes.
So rather I turned my back, and I had my men hurl the cheese at them. That way I did not have to look at the lovely, lovely goblin ladies who wanted my attention so badly. As I heard the cheese pelting behind me, the cries of pain from these goblins, I knew I had saved people. But after that, went back home, got some rest, and called it a day.
Very well done.
Right.
How was it that you got the goat milk from the moon, though?
From the moon! There's so many details of this story I keep forgetting.
It seemed like an arduous journey. I can't imagine all the details. Are so easy.
Well, before Africa to see the lovely animals, obviously I was a lunar explorer, first man to set foot. Paul of Pauls. Going up there, we acquired a rocket made of sticks, of twine, jet fuel, and propelled ourselves up to there and found the lunar goats. It's why it churns into cheese so quickly. Lower gravity up there.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Very nice.
Wonderful tale. Wonderful tale.
Wonderful day.
All
Huzzah
right.
to you, sir.
Paul.
Thank you, thank you.
Paul of Pauls.
And you said your name was?
Oh, you know that.
What?
Oh, the that.
Bless you. Go on.
Why, thank you. I didn't realize you were a priest as well.
Many titles.
Gentlemen, perhaps you could enlighten me on the time that you set sail to all 7 seas, and by the end of this, discovering the last living unicorn.
Well, you see, when we began the expedition, we weren't entirely sure that there even was a unicorn. But knowing that the Queen would not fund such a dangerous expedition without good cause, and her beloved daughter needing the unicorn's blessing to cure her from a terrible illness, I realized that the best way was to insinuate that such a thing might exist scattered across the globe somewhere. So I went and I parleyed with the Queen for quite some time in an arduous argument before convincing her that I had actually indeed once seen said unicorn, but couldn't remember exactly where. I'd been far too drunk that evening. You understand?
Of course.
Of course, she believed me and funded several ships. Unfortunately, we lost all of the rest, except for the one that I was on, due to terrible octopi within the seas.
Oh, awful.
So, veering away from these octopi, we began to head north. And we at least believed it was the one as we traveled across. And interestingly enough, have you ever seen a globe?
Yes.
Like a sphere?
No, the ones that they decorate with all the depictions of the different Earths and planets and stuff. on them?
no.
Well, you see, they describe on them little letters that tell you what each place is. And as a matter of fact, it turns out that if you look at just the right light beneath the waters, you can see these enormous letters.
I have seen them, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it takes a keen eye and just the right moonlight. So we began exploring around, putting together this sort of Scrabble, which is another alien game, of different letters. And once you know it, that if you put all of them together in just the right order upon a plaque, it will spell out all of the 7 seas.
And did you get the triple word bonus?
In fact, I did.
Amazing!
And with a triple word bonus, a great portal opened up in front of us. Just ripped open across the land, splitting the seas and heavens, revealing a strange and unusual landscape that I could barely describe. Of course, we wrecked our ship upon it. It was right in front of us. You can't turn a ship around that fast. Still, having a wrecked ship and no backup ships left to survive, we began our expedition across the strange and ineffable world that we had discovered. There, we met with several of the locals, rather intriguing gentlemen, but they, of course, had never heard of a unicorn.
Naturally.
You know, various words, they had all kinds of strange natures and everything. Eventually, one of my compatriots, my dear Turtle here, got a clever idea of perhaps drawing it out and describing said unicorn. With a splendid image to go off of, we compared it to their mythological records upon the cave walls. There they showed us that deep within the woods was the resting place of the fabled unicorn.
I'm so curious. I love myself a good language, sort of omniglot. Do you remember what unicorn was in their language?
Blue bottom.
Floor bottom. Gotta remember that for next time.
Of course.
It takes a right emphasis. I mean, you can't just go around saying floor bottom around everywhere. You have to use it within context and say, you know, that's the floor bottom, or kafoom da pita floor bottom, in reference to different genders and aspects and heights and differences. But once they understood that we were looking for their glorious floor bottom, well, it just took a little bit of convincing. So, me and the men performed a sacred dance with them, getting drunk on all sorts of plants and spirits and mushrooms and, well, I don't entirely recall anything other than the dancing strange trees that were grooving as we moved around. But we did eventually find the unicorn. And as we approached it in its large clearing, I gave it a nice bow. For such a humble creature should be treated with respect. And I spoke of the dear queen daughter's suffering illness, the pox and marks upon her once beautiful face, her golden hair turning shriveled and gray. And the unicorn was so moved, it wept tears that I quickly scooped up in my wine flask. Of course, from there, we had to, salvage several bits and pieces and use old turtle shells to fast ourselves a new raft. And we went out into the water and, really, using the octopi that had been chasing us the entire time, lashed our turtle shells to them and made our epic adventure back to the queen with the unicorn's tears.
Amazing tale.
Incredible.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry. After such a long train, I can't quite remember everyone's names.
The Lady Captain Theodosia. We'll just go with that.
Lady Captain Theodosia.
Yes.
Now, I have heard of your many splendid adventures across the sea, much like my own.
Mm-hmm.
However, I heard that on your last expedition to the northern edge of the world, you encountered the great Princess Saradun.
Yes, that was quite a discovery. So, I was assured by Skitty.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, encountered him. That
He was working with you
Talents.
at the time.
Well, I think it was after you. He'd learned the error of his ways with avarice.
Ah.
Because my map was actually made with hazelnut butter. So he'd upgraded.
Do you still find him entirely useless, or is he like a little more worthwhile now?
Well, let me tell you.
Of course, of course.
So we're sailing north. We eventually hit a nice ice shelf and decided we had to go on foot. Clearly, the world is encased by a rectangle of ice. Because everyone knows the world is actually a rectangle. The globe's, it's all a conspiracy.
Indeed, I mean, how did they get the levers on?
Precisely. You can't write on a curved surface. Ridiculous. So we're proceeding on foot. But we get hit by a blizzard. And unfortunately, this completely eliminates the map. So Skitty, as the creator of it, had to lead the way out of memory. Unfortunately, in the process, we had skewed, I think, a little bit east. And
Sounds like Skitty.
unfortunately, he did fall through the ice. But in doing so,
Also sounds like Skitty.
yes, in doing so, we discovered that there is, in fact, an entire land beneath the ice.
Now, is this... Ooh! Toss my coins about, I've more where those come from.
Oh, it's there, it's there.
Lovely. Is this perhaps when you discovered that Skitty was, in fact, part merman?
Yes. You see, upon returning to this world, his tail erected. And it made sense why he was so confused on land. He was working so hard to remember how to walk.
He
'cause
wasn't
was not
utterly incompetent, just not of this world.
Listen, he has a PhD in nuisance.
Yes. But that is when we learned that Skitty, the merman, is in fact the joker to the royal kingdom of this land. Yes. So we decided we needed to learn the true origins of this. This was way more important than the edge of the world at this particular moment. So as we're going through this mostly frozen merperson world with their polar bear companions, we are led to the fabulous court built of the bluest ice. And we encountered the princess whose name I have completely spaced on.
The Princess Saradun.
Saradun, yes, that was her name. And of course, she,
I'm awful with names as well.
yes, you meet so many people, and you
Well,
just
when they're
can't
so stunning, sometimes things don't
Yeah.
things don't stay.
Yeah.
Nice.
precisely. She was overwhelmed by finally having her Joker back, so we were able to enjoy a banquet with her in which we discovered the rare ice antelope, which makes very good eating. She then, had a falling out with her sister. She really felt she had to let some emotions go, so we decided to hightail it out. And unfortunately, without Skitty, our guide, we were not able to make it to the end of the world, so we have to retrace our steps, and we'll try again.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Never give up.
thank you.
It's probably an actually more grand feat than finding the edge of the world. They found somebody that wanted Skitty.
That's
Huzzah for that one.
Huzzah!
Duh.
Okay. All right, well, it looks like everybody's cups are getting empty, so let's see who's buying the next round. So, in the order that the stories were told, Czar Jordan, whose story moved you the most?
Well, no, while I absolutely
It's a good word. You're all witness to its creation. History.
yes, absolutely enjoy a good dance and a gyration with goblins.
A bit of hips moving even.
Indeed.
But did they lie?
But I cannot lie. And I would say that the fact that you were able to find Skitty something that he was good at, you have the best tale.
I'm so moved. Thank you.
All of your coins. What you have.
Oh, I see.
Keep that.
All right, fine.
Ta-da. Leave it out of your bag.
There you
That's
are.
the mistake we made last year. Leave it out of your bag.
Makes
Okay. Paul. Paul of Paul's most intrepid Paul.
That's me.
Whose story moved you?
The most moving story to me that truly just captured my heart was my fine fellow here on the very end. The story of your sailing was wonderful, and I am sorry to hear for the Queen's daughter. I hope she's made a speedy recovery.
Oh, quite. With the unicorn tears, it was just a miraculous.
Please send these over.
There you go.
Well done.
Well, and wouldn't you have it? I was just as moved by your tale of gyrational cheers
Amazing!
as the goblins that you were giving it to. So thank you to you, and huzzah!
Huzzah!
All right.
Appreciate it.
Lady Captain.
I think it's something to do with these matching jackets, but I too was just so overwhelmed by the ingeniousness of the moon cheese as a source of means. So I'm going to have to tip you, sir.
Okay, there we go.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, since it's time for everybody to buy a round, let's have everybody check their coin purses.
Absolutely.
Who's
I
buying?
must stack my riches.
I believe it's the Paul's to Paul's.
Yes.
Paul.
Oh, yes. Looks like Paul's buying the next round.
You are be a gentleman, would you?
And how much would that cost?
A coin per clip.
Yes. Well, lowest for you.
Wow.
We'll go middle for the other cups around.
Okay.
Lovely.
Just hang on. Yeah. All right, wonderful. So let's refill our cup. And the evening is still young. It seems to me we have time for more tales. So, starting where we left off. Switching directions.
Yes. So I believe on your many adventures, you told me the last time we met how you had actually relocated the source of the Nile.
Oh.
Oh, that is quite the extraordinary tale. You see, the Nile is believed to originally have been in Egypt and run through the African continent. Well, it don't actually originate there. There are plenty of grand rivers, and many of them have been called various names. But the truth is that the Nile River was actually once on the moon.
Wow.
I do not lie. See, exploring the world and once again with my relations with the queen and helping help her daughter, was quite easily able to convince her about the extraordinary benefits that unicorn tears, and that with her daughter's miraculous recovery, her daughter should go on a grand adventure to see the world. What better place to experience the world from up above, where you can look at all of it?
Well, well,
Indeed.
That's science.
Exactly. So I convinced her of the various intricacies to take us to the moon, and as her chaperone,
Is this actually when you managed to develop the formula for a new way to get onto the moon?
it is, as a matter of fact. You see, all of the various bamboo sticks and rocket fuel and
The
contraptions-
traditional method, of course.
Of course. It's just far too expensive, and even the queen on her mighty budget can't afford to send both a great explorer such as myself and her daughter in such a contraption, nor is it safe for her daughter. So, what we decided was the best way to do it was to get a pair of bison and strap a large rubber band to each of them, and then attach the rubber band to the two great towers of the kingdom. From there, the oxen would carry the rubber band as far onto the horizon as you could possibly go. And in that rubber band, we nested a nice little seat for me and the young princess. Once there, we would trim the oxen's horn, and the force of the rubber band would launch us across the sky, in which we would circle the globe many a time before finally settling around and landing on the moon. But, as luck would have it, as soon as we were there, we happened to not just splash down on the hard, rocky surface of the moon, a miscalculation on my part. Fortunately, we fell into a great grand river, splashed entirely in, a great river filled with moon crocodiles and terrifying fish and splendid frogs and even goblins.
River goblins.
River goblins.
Moon river.
See, unlike
The most dangerous kind.
the green Arctic goblins, river goblins are blue,
Oh.
so you don't see them in the water.
That's terrifying.
So as we had splashed down in this wonderful little river that we had found, turned out that this river went straight into the great Moon King's kingdom. We followed it there, exploring the moon and looking upon the glorious earth. As we arrived, we introduced ourselves to the king and queen of the moon, and they're quite lofty. They float around on their great clouds and flying ships. And with all of this going on, all of the lesser moon people that walk around on the ground and have to go about their daily lives, they were constantly having to walk across this river, going back and forth, trading places, and they would say that they couldn't get someplace because the river was in the way, and they were just accused of being in denial.
A tip for that one!
Yeah.
Well, the same contraption, if we could wrap a rubber band around the entire Nile River, we could fling it like a great arrow across the sky into the earth and bring more waters and great lands, and possibly even just a little of the Nile, to the Queen's lands. Unfortunately, oxen are very difficult to get on the moon, as you're quite aware.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, we had to resort to... Oh, what did you name them? I remember from your journey. The moon goats.
Oh, the moon goats, the florpomorphs.
The florpomorphs. Yes, indeed. So the florpomorphs, they can't carry quite as much as an earthen oxen. Lower gravity, they don't develop as much muscle. So we had to get all of the florpomorphs in the kingdom to carry this rubber band all the way across. And since there's less gravity, we had to go all the way around the moon. From there, once we had locked the Nile in, we released the florpomorphs, and the rubber band spun around like a rapid unwrapping of a present, tearing apart the surface of the moon and flinging the Nile not to the Queen's land, but right into the heart of Africa, and me and the princess with it. But how me and the princess got out of Africa is a story for another time.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
However, Paul of Pauls,
That's me.
I understand this is a bit of a sensitive subject and a story you're not quite telling. As I understand it, you were not always the Paul of Pauls, but just a Paul. Would you share with us the glorious tale that you once told me
You
of
know,
how you became the Paul of Pauls?
during such a night of revelry like this, and coin moving back and forth, and lovely stories, I think it is time I indulge, I express this story. It's one I keep near and dear to myself.
It's truly brave of you.
It is.
When I was born, I was just born Paul. Not Paul the Intrepid Paul, just Paul.
That's appalling.
A tip for that one. Now, my mother and father, they were lovely folk, really. One, a simple farmer, a lovely folk, and then the other, an accountant. Needs managing for books, right? So I grew up,
There's a lot of letters to keep track of.
Of course, exactly. So I grew up, modest, to say the least. Nothing too extraordinary by any means, but I was well taken care of. I had friends in school, and for me,
Yes, I heard. Is it true that you were friends with John, George, and Ringo?
yes, John, George, and Ringo. These folks were lovely. I met them back in elementary school, when I was just a boy, of course. And, well, we found ourselves sitting together at lunch and often singing songs of joy, of happiness, after indulging a bit, writing a bit more interesting material. And after a while, we found ourselves being quite famous, really. People would flock to the play yard to watch us play.
That's such a flaw.
Yes, whenever we would play, in fact, the biggest audience we would gather would be the local insects, the beetles. They would join us, and people, they began to name us after them. But the tales of our rock career, story for another day, of course.
Of course.
Back on to how I got my name, of
Paul
course.
of Pauls.
Well, after I'd moved out of grade school, I found that moving into higher education, I met another Paul. A rival is what I would call him. An intellectual who thought he could match my prowess, of course, but simply could not. Now, after I had already demonstrated through feats of bravery, through feats of heroism, that I was the better Paul, definitively, I mean, I saved millions in this time. Well, he thought he might be able to scare me to death, that he might be able to knock me off my feet and cause me to collapse in fear. He initially started this by hiding around a corner, scaring me, and that was fine and all, but it didn't quite get me. So he thought he might be able to put a bucket of water above a door and spill it upon me and get the fear, and that didn't work either.
Naturally.
And so he thought, maybe for his last trick, he would raise a horde of undead to fight me. Well,
That's quite talented, Paul. How did you ever overcome it?
you see, during all this time studying, I was actually majoring in divine rights to cleanse the undead from this world. Little did he know that when he approached me with his undead army, it was as simple as some arcane words, the flapping of my hands, a bribe to the zombies, of course.
Yes, and yes.
And they simply left.
I heard that a key part of this involved the coordinated dance of 3 antelopes. Is that correct?
Ah, of course it is, yes. The divine right itself was derived from the antelope culture itself. Did you know they're actually remarkably good at defeating undead on their own?
Angela.
Yes, the antelope are the natural protectors of the undead, between the barrier to life and death.
I see.
Doesn't explain the large...
Exactly, for spearing through flesh. So, when I was abroad on my studies, I actually found myself in East Asia with quite a few antelope, totally different animal, who spoke English. They managed to sit me down and educate me on their ancient ways. Now, defeating the zombies, I did not have the horns myself, but like I said, gold is as good as any horn. So when they turned and left, this Paul, he stood here ruined and defeated, obviously, and, well, that's how I got my name. He found he could not scare me into death and had to back down, making me the Paul of Pauls.
Ah.
Well done, sir.
Huzzah!
Thank you, thank you. So, what was it, sir? Jordan!
Yes, yes. Thank you, I needed it too.
Jordan, perhaps you could enlighten me on the time. I have only heard of this from acquaintances, of course. Perhaps you could enlighten me on the time that you were cursed to have a beard made of gold. And how you found yourself out of that situation, of course.
Naturally. Can't be walking around with a beard of gold. So, I found myself upon a large body of water. You might know it. It's called the ocean.
Ooh.
Familiar.
The
yes,
ocean.
familiar.
Yes. I found myself upon the ocean.
From the seventh sea.
Yes, very different. I found myself upon the ocean in a raft, all by myself. Yes. But I was venturing forth, as one does when you're an explorer. You understand.
Yes.
And I heard this small noise. It sounded sort of like a tiny fart. Yes, like a tiny fart of a man. And yes.
Don't tell me that this is how you met City.
This is how I met Skitty. And actually, when I saw him first, he was in the water. I did not know he was a mer person at the time. Now it all makes sense. However, I mistook him for a leprechaun.
Of course,
Yeah.
because mer people and leprechauns so very similar. at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yes.
And in the ocean.
And in the ocean, naturally. It's where leprechauns live.
Their habitat.
Rainbow always ends.
So, I am greeted by this fart of a man and bring him upon my raft. This is when I found out that Skitty does not stop talking. Continued going on and on. He went on about his girlfriend. He went on about the play that he was watching. He went on about his grandmother who was sick. It doesn't matter. It's just Skitty. So I told him, Skitty, he told me his name was, I can't pronounce it, so I called him Skitty. I told him, Skitty, you need to quit talking. And he told me, well, if you say that to me and I quit talking, then you will win a fortune. So naturally, I said, well, I am not one to back down from a bet. So naturally, I tied up Skitty and gagged him so he wouldn't be able to speak. What you do to make him to stop talking, right?
Should've tried that. That
I
would've made
didn't know that he had a mouth somewhere else.
Oh. The stomach mouth, right?
Yes, naturally.
Yes.
Belly button mouth. He begins speaking and speaking and speaking incessantly. I can't get Skitty to stop talking. So I punched him in the stomach mouth, hopefully to get him the air to quit. It didn't. And I eventually was able to get him to stop talking by singing a ballad like a singer named Joshua Groban. And
Is this when you managed to meet my old friends? Ringo and the other two?
Ringo, George, and John.
That's the one!
Yes. They were sailing past on a cruise ship and were playing without you.
Well, adventuring, pole of poles, you know how it goes.
Yes, something
I
about.
heard they found another asshole.
You shouldn't speak of Yoko such a way. But now
Was the ship not yellow?
it was. It was yellow, this ship, yes. And they were able to sail around hitch us a ride, of course, but not before they found us because I was singing a ballad a la Joshua Groban. And I sang in such a voice that only, apparently, leprechaun mer people can hear, and it shut him up. And immediately, he waved his hands in front of me.
Are you cussing me?
No. I am not a leprechaun merfolk, so you're perfectly fine. Caressed my cheek, and immediately coins start sprouting from my face. Now, this would scare anyone, because when is it going to stop? Yes?
And you're on a raft, after
And
all.
I'm on a raft. So I begin asking Skitty to take my newly forming beard and toss it up onto the yellow boat along with your beetle friends, and move my beard. We sort of had to make this like a maneuver with some leverage. He had to use like a stick of some kind, as well as some seaweed to wrap it up because it was going everywhere. And we pushed my long beard, made of gold,
Of course.
up onto this ship. Now, this is when I actually got to hear your friends sing. And they were absolutely fantastic, so I completely endorsed them, shaved my beard, and made sure that they got the proper due comeuppance that they
Of
needed.
course.
That's probably why they're more famous than you are, in a different aspect, of course.
There's not a single Paul more famous than me. That I know at least.
There you are.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Now, as I recall, dear Theodosia, what to say to you?
So many things.
So many things.
A tip for that one!
I had heard from other explorers, of course, that you were once married to a bear. Yep. Named Tutu.
Dear Tutu.
Yes. Could you explain how you first met and why you're not together now?
It's just a tale for the ages, I swear. Tragic in some ways, but the love of a lifetime. So I was traveling across Russia. Decided if I couldn't get through to the northern wall, I would go for the east. And as we were on our way, I encountered 3 witches. And they bestowed upon me a prophecy saying that I would meet a bear of a man who would change my life forever. And witches' prophecies always go well, as we know from the new play, Macbeth, that it goes so well. I mean, he got a prophecy, he became king happily ever after. So,
That's the short. That's the short.
Story was complete. I don't know.
yeah, didn't need to read further.
I don't remember many more important details other than those.
Yeah. So I decided this was, fortuitous. So we proceeded further with the witch's words in mind. As we crossed the Ural Mountains, quite an ordeal, we came upon this enclave of bears, the proper term for a group of bears.
An enclave.
An enclave.
Yes.
Yes. But these were no ordinary bears, for they did speak.
Oh.
I mean, it was Russian, so it took a little while to
Yes,
really
yes,
figure
yes,
this
yes,
out. But eventually, I was able to speak slow and loud enough that we overcame our language differences.
Always the best way to deal with language differences.
Yeah, I don't know why people
Shouting in
can
English.
Shouting in English.
Understand.
Slowly.
It's really a language that you develop through assimilation.
Yes.
Yes.
It is the most logical language. Our grammar is flawless.
Yes.
But once I was able to communicate with the bears. I learned that they were looking to take on the Asian goblin army. Unfortunately, we didn't have any moon cheese.
Nasty critters.
They are.
On the moon, in Africa, everywhere.
Yes, and these ones are purple, so thankfully they stand out against the wilderness. So I decided we could aid the bears, but we needed an arrangement. We needed a deal here to make sure that this worked out well. Well, Tutu, their leader, proposed that we needed a political marriage. I was like, well, this is ridiculous, but the witches did say, and so this has to end well.
And when you got presumably politically arranged with Tutu, were you aware that he was in fact the Prince of Russia at the time?
You know, I had heard that that might be the case. But I wasn't entirely sure because Tutu is a very common Russian name. Yes. It's right up there with Paul. But as we came to this arrangement, we had our marriage, and we started to form our battle plans. I realized that indeed this was the Tutu, Prince of Russia, the future Tsar of Russia. Not to be confused with the Tsar, the Safari.
Yeah,
Unless
two
there's a
different
relation.
places. No.
This is
Different Tsar.
Different Tsar.
It's a Bears Our story.
Yes.
Yes.
I can't tip you!
Well, in the process of planning battle against these goblins,
Can I ask?
yes,
So I understand it. The only way to go into combat with a Russian bear is to ride on top of it, standing on both legs, carrying a spear. Can you tell me how in such a short time you managed to master such an art?
well, Tutu is a very good teacher.
Ooh.
So, as we formed our battle plans, he did inform me this was the only way in which we could really defeat the goblins. For with our combined height, the goblins would be so overwhelmed they would have to scurry underground. And there they would be eaten by the notorious underground Russian ostrich. Yeah, they were above ground to try and avoid that, but there was an outbreak. So we had this advantage. And it was in this process of learning how to properly ride Tutu the bear that we really formed a great, wonderful connection. And I knew this indeed would be the love of my life forever. Conveniently, we were already married, so we could skip all that part. However, it was unfortunate that as we entered month 3 of this campaign against the goblins, the goblin leader decided to make one last stand against going underground and being devoured by ostriches. Yes. Well, as we were charging, Tutu and I managed to throw my spear, and it pierced the goblin leader's heart, but not before it could let loose a bow that pierced Tutu also through the heart.
No.
So our army was defeated. He died knowing he was successful. But that was the end of our marriage. And unfortunately, the Russian royal family was passed along to some humans of some notoriety. Yes,
Probably in better hands now, anyway.
definitely. Yes.
Less
Lovely
hairy
tale.
ones.
Huzzah!
Huzzah. Okay.
All right.
Whose tale moved you?
You know. Now I have to remember what
The hardest part,
It's-
recall.
When you're spinning up your improving.
It's true.
Yes. You know, I particularly appreciate someone who patronizes the arts. So I loved your story.
Oh, thank you.
And
I was just so moved by the tragedy of your marriage with Tutu. I myself have lost a spouse, and for surviving that in such a heroic manner, I tip my hat to thee.
Thank you.
you lost your spouse for a weekend at Carnival.
Yeah.
Anyway, Paul.
Tutu, God rest his soul.
You are my favorite Paul.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Looks again like everybody's cups are empty. How are the coin purses looking?
A little better.
Seems I've had a bit to drink.
Not doing too bad.
Not doing awful.
Who's got the most?
I've got 4.
I've got 4 coins as well.
I have 5.
Oh,
Looks like you're buying the round, big shot.
Yes, so 3.
marvelous.
Yes, okay.
All righty. Now, I actually don't have a working timepiece. This is just a timer. What time have we got?
Oh,
8:12.
8 to 12.
All right. So we do have time for one more round, if folks are into it.
I've always got another story in me.
The important vote?
All right.
Always another adventure.
All righty. So here's what we're going to do to shake things up a little bit. You went last again.
Yep.
So we're going to have you start with the first prompt.
Okay.
Everybody's going to get one prompt, but it's going to be open call. So you can call on anybody you want to give them a prompt.
Understood.
But let's not double up. Everybody will get to tell one story.
Okay.
We didn't rehearse this part, so if it goes sideways, blame them.
I'm fuzzy on the rule because Frosty's out of coins. Does Frosty get a coin? Or is it
Oh,
just...
yeah. Yes, that's my house rule.
Yes.
No, we
Keep everybody in the game. Nobody else is broke, right?
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
There's a mechanic we're not using. When you're out of coins, you either have to fess up to it and leave, or you sort of hide the fact that you're out of coins. But if you interject with somebody, because you can still interject, if you're called on it and don't actually have the coin, there's a duel. Which I actually thought would be fun to bring Nerf pistols and have blunted muskets. But RageCon, I'm going to respect their rules, nothing with projectiles, and it seemed silly to sort of stop it for Rochambeau, so we're just going to not duel. So I'm just making sure at the beginning of the round, nobody's broke.
All right.
Alrighty. So you can call on anyone you like. The final tale of the evening. What is the tale you would like to hear?
Paul,
That's me.
I understand that at some point in grade school, I think it may have been slightly after your Beetle era, you discovered the saber-tooth aardvark. Is that correct?
Yes, my greatest discovery, some say. At the time, I was not Paul the Intrepid Paul, I was just Paul. And I looked like this, so I'll be taking off the hat to tell this story, of course.
The ballers are hot.
Yes, they are. You're telling me.
It's to truly understand the type of Paul you were at the time, and no other reason.
Right.
Yes.
Well, back in grade school, I was, of course, top student of my class. I scored full marks on everything, and I was the only one to get chocolate milk at lunch. Which drew certain eyes to me. Eyes of royalty, eyes of import, and most importantly, eyes of museum owners who wanted me to go out and collect more things for them to display. Now, me being at the absolute oldest 10 at the time, I was, of course, keen to begin adventuring. Now, I couldn't get my hands on a ship for a voyage, much less a cart, so I packed my bags and I put on my boots and I began my travel. I walked for many a day and many a night and many an afternoon and many a dusk and many a dawn and the other times of day. Until I had arrived at Missouri. I believe that's where the first aardvark of some special capacity. Perhaps remind me, it's been so long since I found it.
I believe it was the saber-tooth.
The saber-toothed aardvark, of course.
Not to be confused with the razorback aardvark.
The razorback aardvark. Unfortunately, I actually didn't find that one. But I'm sure that we might be able to... It was here in Missouri, though, that I arrived and was meeting lovely folk. They all spoke generically, vaguely about discoveries that they had. I learned later, of course, they didn't want to give away their secrets. But no one hides from John. Paul. Sorry, frog in my throat.
Well, it is. We've had several rounds.
Yes, it must be the booze. But here, they sent me out into the forest. You see, if I could find...
The forest of Missouri.
Yes, all of them that exist there. It's several trees.
Oh.
They sent me into this forest to see if I could find a rare herb, an herb that they would use for a concoction that would allow them to dream vividly, as they described it. So as I set out into this forest, I began to look upon the ground. There was grass, flowers, the occasional newt, before, yes, a plant that was very herby in nature. I plucked a couple of its leaves and taken it back, and when I had done so, they traded me a most wondrous thing. Ivory. Teeth from something. Now, of course, I had to know where they got this from. So that led me all the way to Arizona, which is, in fact, where I found the saber-toothed aardvark. Quite a quick find, walked in, saw it, went, oh, I know, and that was the story.
The journey is the important part.
Absolutely.
Huzzah.
Thank you. That's for the I'd actually like to ask you, Jordan.
Yes. For that is my name today.
Absolutely. I've heard.
Yes, recently acquired.
I've heard of many, many tales of you discovering and adventuring, but I'd specifically like to hear the tale of now when you discovered a bird with 4 wings that they say could grant miracles.
Oh, yes, of course. You're speaking of the snarfles. Yes,
Snarfles.
the
See, I've
snarfles.
forgotten the name.
Yes. Now you have to understand snarfles. Snarfles are found in the desert part of Asia. Yes?
Yep.
Now, as you move through the desert, for there is no foliage here, you must move in such a way, shift your body lest you fall into the sands of Asia. Now, the snarfles, though, the snarfles actually don't live in trees, of course, because there's no trees around. It's a desert. They tend to live in log cabins and made entirely of needles. It's very hard to find these things because 1, the sands move all of the time, and 2, when you go to knock on the door, it hurts your hand. I mean, needles.
I swear you encountered the big bad wolf for the first time, trying to blow this house over.
Now, the big bad wolf was actually hired by me.
Oh.
I don't want to hurt my precious hand, of course. See, now we need to get these needles out of the way. Big bad wolf comes in, says, I can do the job. I say, of course you can do the job. And the big bad wolf, as we all know, known for the huffing and puffing,
Yes.
decides to go up and knock on the door. Hurts his hand, leaves because he's now injured, has to go to the hospital. So I actually huffed and puffed. Now, it took a lot, a lot of air and a lot of puffing in order to blow down all of these needles. It was many a moon to actually blow down all of these needles, but I was able to do so, and inside was the nest of the snarfles. Now, snarfles don't actually have 4 wings.
Really?
Not usually.
Oh.
What you have to do is a mating call. Now, yes? So the mating call is It's called the mating call of the ex-husband. Yes? So you have to call
rest
out. I'm so sorry. Is this too much?
No, he's a former husband, not an ex.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
Yes.
So the mating call of the ex-husband goes something like this. You don't want to frighten it, yes? So you have to move up on it slowly, and you have to greet it in a way that it understands. I'll take care of dishes today. They fall into a sense of security.
Ooh, okay.
Yes? Then you say something along the lines of, "You're not letting yourself go. It's fine. You look just like you did when you were 20. Now,
Trap them right where you are.
trapped right where you want them." And you know what happens? They begin to sprout that second set of wings. They show off a little bit more to you because you know how it is.
Of course.
Now, you can't stop here with the mating call, or they'll find out. They will tell the church. So, what you need to do is continue said mating call. I love the Cubs. Tell me more about them. And they go on and on. And as they continue to speak, these snarfles about the Cubs, whatever they are, I don't know. Doesn't matter. You actually come up from behind. You grab a hold of the chest part of them. You don't want to hurt the wings, of course. Hold on to them, and this is when they grant you anything that you need. So naturally, I asked for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Was it tasty?
Naturally, it was made by a snarfle.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Worthy quest. Worthy quest.
And they are.
Huzzah. Huzzah, dude.
Yes. Now, my dear blessed friend on the end, do you mind if I call you Skitty?
How dare you reveal my secret?
I'm so sorry. I mean,
So hard.
instead,
Mating call isn't going to work this
I'm
time.
so sorry. Instead, would you regale us with this story about the time that you found butt emeralds in the mountain of doom?
Oh,
Dangerous.
There's butt emeralds that should be dangerous.
the dangerous place.
Yes.
As my friend Paul is quite aware. And I'm sure you are as well. You've been to Africa? Well, after having fallen and crashed into the lands with the princess, we began our deep exploration and expedition out. Having no compass left over and only the moon to guide us, being all turned around, we unfortunately headed south, deeper into Africa, instead of north across the great inland sea. I should have known, I'd already been there, but
You should have seen the codex within the water.
right. I wasn't looking, I had a little girl to take care of.
Ah.
Well, we continue our journey into the great lands, deeper into Africa. The hills began to rise and then fall, and rise a little more. Began to be aware of a looming shadow on the horizon. Now, interesting enough, if you tried to ask any of the folk in this area about said looming shadow on the horizon, no one would speak of it. Acted as if it didn't exist. I couldn't leave well enough alone at that. I just could not deny this enormous shadow. So I continued my pursuit, bearing all danger, and ventured towards this enormous peak of a shadow, casting darkness all across the land. And the whole place turned out to be cursed and filled with horrible undead. And I had the princess with me. Well, unfortunately, the undead got the better of me, kidnapped the princess, and turned her into a zombie.
After the unicorn tears and everything. How tragic.
Indeed. After everything I'd been through.
And with no
After
answer.
everything she'd been through. Well, I was not going to leave the princess a zombie. Not. Various cures. Ailments, elixirs, holy men. But such things are very dangerous on a young child's constitution. And I knew that the witch doctors in the area could be convinced to create a poultice for the young princess. But I need some fortune to pay them with.
Is this when you learned that the witch doctors in the area are actually terribly racist against the merfolk people?
They don't like merfolk?
They do not. Indeed, as soon as I went into the tribal lands, and encountered and desperately cried with them to see the witch doctor, they had captured me and 2 other merfolk. They had us tied up on poles. They brought the shaman out to see us. He told us that as much as they hated our people, he couldn't kill us off. Their tribe would utilize everything. So, they were going to turn us into canoes.
Canoes!
Canoes!
It's only logical.
Yeah.
Waste not, what not, Paul.
Precisely. So,
Reduce,
they began
reuse.
asking us what we would want in exchange to pay us off for turning us into canoes. They weren't complete savages. They had, they were fairly decent folk, despite their prejudice. And the other 2 went about their wishes and desires, having happy times and adventures or gold for the family. But I was clever. I anticipated the process of which they would be turning into me a canoe. The skin on the body would make the great lining for it, and without that, no canoe, and they would be forced to release me. And so I asked the shaman for a fork. He agreed. He went and he got the fork. He came back with it. He was like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes. My deepest desire in this world is to have the greatest fork, so I might hold it in my hand for but a moment." He offered it to me, and I touched it, and I began stabbing myself rapidly with the fork all across my body, and confronted him with it, with all of the holes, said, "You're not going to make a canoe out of me." And he was forced to release me.
Now, I understand that before you left, the Princess Sarah Dune had bestowed a spell upon you that would allow you to turn holes in your skin into weapons. Is that correct?
Not exactly weapons, but a bewilderment spell to enchant. Because you see, I had swam in denial, and with that had received the princess's blessing and was completely unaware of my wounds, and stumped and shocked all of the tribespeople with awe, allowing me to flee unassaulted. After which, I knew, having done that, they would still be in awe. So I stole the poultice. Turns out the reason why I have to pay them so much is that the key ingredient is the fabled butt diamonds.
Butt diamonds!
I just so happen to have acquired these before and know that you can get butt diamonds from any hill giant. You see, what they do is they take the large rocks of the mountains and they create large cushions for the very large, round, rotund behinds. And the enormous pressure crushes the stones into diamonds. And once they've nodded off from the comfort, just slightly tip them over. And as they roll, they have revealed the diamonds. From there, I took the diamonds, rescued the princess, mixed the poultice, cured her, and returned to the queen.
Well done. Well done.
Huzzah.
All righty. So, whose story moved you?
You know, I didn't actually tell a story this round.
Oh,
No, yeah, there is one more.
oh,
Yeah.
Well, I've
Just
had one
because
too
you
many.
are out of a drink
Yes,
doesn't mean we
I've
are.
had one too many, it seems. My apologies.
I'll take it very personally.
Theodosia,
Yes.
as I recall, You too were quite the performer. And I'd hate to reveal your secret, but I think it's time Paul knows that you were in fact his rival for quite some time.
Oh no!
I thought we weren't going to bring that up.
Well, since everything's getting revealed tonight, I figure no secrets amongst friends.
Paul, I'm so sorry. But I too am Paul.
We'll see if I forgive you after this story.
Let us have a gentlemanly time here.
Keep it civil.
And as long as you tell the story, yes.
Yes.
Reserve your judgment.
See, after you defeated my undead army, I fled into the Amazon to do some deep reflecting, because I knew I truly could not be the most Paul of Pauls, the superior Paul. You were just far too good for that. And there, as I was on the verge of death from heat stroke and humidity, and had climbed a tree to escape a truly terrifyingly large snake, I really got to reflect upon my life. And I realized that I had, maybe escalated things a little too quickly. Like going from water on the door to undead army. There maybe could have been some other steps. So I decided that the only way that I could truly make up for my misdeeds was to completely change my identity. And so, as I proceeded to try and make my way out of this rainforest, I was not prepared for this. But I was so distraught by my defeat and realizing the horrors that I had tried to inflict upon you unsuccessfully. I decided that that I really needed to stay off land in general, and I would become a captain, a lady captain, because you can't be Paul, so be a captain. So I eventually.
I ask,
Yes.
how did you convince the African shamans of Doom Mountain to transform you into a female captain?
So, after I made it to the Yucatan Peninsula, I stole my first ship. I was trying to get back to England because I was the Duke of London. However, my navigating skills were subpar. I did not have a yellow boat.
Or skitty anymore.
Or a skitty, yes. Well, no, this was pre-skitty. It was pre-skitty, so I didn't have a skitty. So I got blown off course, and I landed in West Africa. It was there as I had wrecked my ship, so I was trying to find another means, and I heard that the Nile was a great way to get back into Europe, and so I was wandering in a vaguely eastern direction, and it was there that I encountered some truly wonderful shaman, and I told them of my dilemma, and that I, Paul, needed to become the lady captain,
Now,
Theodosia.
yes, isn't this the part where the shaman tells you that the only way to take someone else's identity is to find them in their dream, and that is the only way that you could truly use the name
Yes.
for yourself?
Yes. So.
Good luck, Jordan.
You're gonna sleep very well tonight.
So, they gave me this potion that would allow me to wander through the dream realm to find the original Theodosia, who was not a captain, though. She was an elderly woman in France. So I came upon her dream. And she was really reflecting on the fact that her life had consisted mainly of churning butter, baking baguettes, and dealing with her 13 sons. And she just couldn't deal with it. She felt she had wasted her life. So I went up to her and I said, "Hello, I am Paul. But I would like to no longer be Paul. what if we traded identities?
Oh.
And you could become Paul and escape and never turn better ever again. And she said, yes, absolutely. So, in this process,
In that accent.
In that French
French accent.
oui. Yes, that sounds more offensive. So, I was trying to provide the dignity of this woman.
Of course, naturally.
Yes. So, the shamans were able to take this agreement in our dream state, in our slumber, and we were able to swap identities and bodies.
Freaky Friday style.
Very much so.
These the very children, the 13 turning children, that you gave to Paul to fend off the goblins.
They make great men.
Yes. Yes, they were. But that's another story. So, I became Lady Captain Theodosia Bellington, Duchess of London, and I have worked to generally improve my ways. I have stolen a few more ships, but I feel like that's an affront to you. And, you know, become a better person now that I know that I should not be a Paul.
And indeed is not a Paul.
Right.
Yes.
True.
Truly a moving tale.
Thank you.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.
Okay, now that I can count.
The call of the ex-husband.
I've mastered it well.
All right.
Yes, I was having flashbacks of it.
And how about you?
He's really drunk about it. I'm no longer skinny.
That's right.
Well, I was also quite moved by the call of the ex-husband.
Thank you.
And down at the end, Paul.
Truly, I think we could both be intrepid together.
Oh.
Thank you, Paul.
And naturally, since I can't vote for myself,
That would be
being a
unseemly.
gentleman, of course, yes, I should keep my decorum and truly say that it is very brave of someone to completely change their name. I would know.
That was the hard part, really.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And how do the coin scouts look?
I'm broke!
As any good evening should end.
Yes.
Huzzah to that!
I
Okay.
have 4.
Okay, and there's 6 here. So, all right, last round is on Captain Theodosia.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
All righty. So, thank you everybody that came to watch. I hope this was as entertaining for you guys as it was for us. We love these improv type games. We had a really, really good crew this year. I want to thank Frosty with Andromeda Adventures, and I want to thank Mythic Geekdom for being part of this with us. It would not have been the same without it being a collaboration. Jillian is part of Mythical Family with us and part of our regular Sunday streams. We have a D&D stream and is involved in just about everything else that we're working on to build an inclusive and inviting space for everybody to just enjoy their geekiness and their hobbies and not have to worry about anything else that might come with it. And yeah, we did anybody have anything they wanted to throw out or laugh at again or anything like that? Or that was beautiful. Okay.
It was so much fun. I love the way that you all remembered little tidbits from previous stories and just built off them with each other. That was the funnest thing. The constant callbacks was delightful.
Yes. The callbacks are amazing when the game actually plays that way. It's a lot of fun. Skitty's at the table with us. Who would have known?
I love it.
Skitty and the rival Paul.
That's right.
Naturally.
The former-
Naturally.
All right. So, again, thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun, and we were glad that folks wanted to come and enjoy this with us. And
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you so much for having us
Absolutely.
on. That was great.
Thank you.
we're going to continue to collaborate with you, and we would love to do more collaboration.
A group cheers?
To more stupid stories.
Alrighty.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!